last 3 years and before I was really involved in California. So yeah, in the business for a while now. And I think locals I'm particularly interested in the technical business. So if you are building something on what locals eventually, I'll be your go-to person for some help. But yeah, I'm excited to showcase what we're doing with locals today. Uh, so a quick study agenda. I'll be mostly focusing on the non-technical aspects. As of today, I kind of wanted to focus more on the philosophical side than the technicals for today. But then we do have some the last few minutes. But then yeah, I really start with my own take on this history and the way in which we compromise these evaluation for the sake of user experience. And then I also wanted to give some background on the experience of organic geology from the experience of itself. And logos is something that is built on top of this organic geology. So it's just taking you back to the right way for kind of uh, very much what we are building and why we are building the work. And we'll also be looking at the anatomy of exposure, which is a section where we'll be looking at how browser-based applications make your data less private and how Global is fixing it. And eventually we'll be diving a bit more into logos and we'll also be looking at some ZK systems that are in use in the production in our tech. And yeah, specifically I also wanted to kind of run you through the Raycon use case. I'm not sure if you guys know about Raycon, and this is been in the bus for the last couple of months, mostly after we started tweeting about data. But yeah, I kind of wanted to do a quick uh, dive into the case study. So yeah, that's going to be pretty much the agenda today. Uh, so let's get started. So blockchains promise decentralization, but the path users take to reach them is anything but centralized. And the reason why I say this is because we did decentralize the chain, but not the stack. And in 2014, Ethereum was far beyond just a blockchain. Ethereum white paper had three main technologies. The first one being Ethereum for consensus, and a Swarm for distributed file storage or for data storage, and Whisper for dynamic communications. And this particular image was taken from Milan, it's only blog post by Medium. Yeah, this one. This is the Gavin Woods representation of how Ethereum was envisioned to be back in time. And right now, the state of these technologies are very different. Ethereum is a lot more mainstream because it's a blockchain, so there's more ways to incentivize Ethereum and from particular operators as it is more interest towards Ethereum. But things like Swarm and Whisper have kind of developed within sorry, although Swarm exists as IPFS today and there's also other file storage solutions available in the market. But for something like this was long forgotten. And the only thing which was in this case after this for dynamic communications was called Baku, which is basically a rebranded uh, version of Logos. So we rebranded Baku and a couple of other technologies into Logos. So yeah, we deeply more into this, but yeah, this is how the Ethereum system looked like back in 2015, but then right now it's completely different. And so yeah, whispered array, storm struggles, and infrastructure was centralized on the go. And the reason why this happened was because people wanted speed. When I say people, it's not just the users, but also the developers wanted speed, wanted speculation, they wanted to have some liquidity laying around, and that's why Ethereum was mainstream, but the other technologies were like not as mainstream. And know that all of the ease of use or the user experience itself was something that it drove Web3 into the centralized past. But the compromises that we have here are privacy, sovereignty, and resilience. So basically, the way I look at this is that we reinvented Web2 without privacy, but on a blockchain. That's how we look at Web3 right now. So yeah, when you use a decentralized application on the browser, let's say you use something like pancakes or any instance like that, there's a lot more information that gets leaked or is public more than what we expect. So the application layer privacy solves only 20% of the exposure, and 80% of these leaks happen below the application layer in the protocol layer itself. And there are different stages of exposure. So your metadata, which includes your IP addresses, your uh, routers, browser fingerprints, and all of these are kind of exposed in various ways, and we have a whole blog article on this. And some of the key areas are the messaging platforms, RPC calls, and stuff. But specifically, RPCs are the ones that are probably the most vulnerable in the area. And again, there's two different types of areas. This user choice areas where users use centralized RPCs, and this infrastructure areas where the protocol provider itself is not as private as it should be. And the browser is the biggest attack surface because of all these reasons. And to validate this statement, in 2025 alone, we had like three big hacks that took place. The first one being the Biden hack, which was probably the biggest of all the three hacks back. And this was because of a compromise mentioned, just logistical vulnerability. And then the other hacks, which include the trust wallet supply chain attack and the digital indicators, got pretty much the whole Ethereum ecosystem in shambles because a lot of apps are kind of integrated in. I believe monitoring also integrated, ledger connected. So yeah, it was pretty big. And yeah, the way we look at this is that smart contracts were not broken, but the web stack is. And RPC providers know a lot more than we do. They know your IP address, wallets, balances, and intents. And surprisingly, the top two control more than 80% of the Ethereum blocks. So when you build out of Ethereum, you don't really communicate with an Ethereum node or an Ethereum full node from your application. You do something called the RPC, which is like a middleman for communicating to a full node. And this particular middleman is super centralized, and they are not just centralized, but they also have access to a lot of information from the client side, which includes all of these things, which again brings the whole privacy into the party. And the way we look at this thing is the settlement is decentralized, but the visibility is centralized. So it's like the blockchain is decentralized and transparent, but then you can kind of correlate the metadata, IP address, your wallet address, to find in the particular transaction. And the solution that we wanted to bring was not just a private blockchain, but a whole privacy preserving tech stack around the sovereign infrastructure we're talking about. And that's Logos. Logos is not just a private blockchain. We wanted to have all the components from the Ethereum, original Ethereum machine And the way an analogy for this, like looking at the transition from the mainframe era into the personal computer era. Because in the mainframe era, everyone was like using one particular compute and it's super centralized. But in the personal computer era, we had like different computes in the edge itself, which is what we have right now. There is one particular compute in the middle, the compute has pretty much all the stability about what is happening in the personal computer. We have the power of moving your data. Yeah, browser-based Web3 quietly brought us back to pseudo decentralization because RPCs are not really decentralizing the stack, but they're just making it concentrated to a central point of connections. So yeah, if another analogy exists for this, it's like renting a house to owning it, because I sovereign systems on limited infrastructure. Because if you use an RPC, you're not really running a node. You're just kind of leasing a node or maybe just renting a node for like a few minutes when you want to interact with the blockchain, which is completely against what we are building. And the best part is some of the most resilient networks built before the Web3 era has already kind of solved this problem. And the two key examples that I wanted to give was Tor and Torrent. So Tor and Torrent have already kind of evaded this problem by looking at local first approaches. So for example, if you use Torrent, the reason why Torrent is not censorable until the present day is simply because uh, you interact with Torrent on your machine. You're not doing it on a remote machine. Even if you're using a hosted solution like BitTorrent, even if BitTorrent goes down, you can still use another torrent line to download the same file. And yeah, that's the beauty of having a direct connection to the network from your local machine. And that's exactly what we are trying to do with Globos. And this is pretty much a first of its kind taken all of Turkey. And it's not really a uh, big architectural improvement, at least for me. I just look at this uh, as the right way of building it. You can also do the same with Ethereum. You can also interact with your Ethereum node from your machine directly. But the problem is that Ethereum node is now optimized to be interacted from your local machine. So logos, on the other hand, can run in any hardware. It can be as simple as a Raspberry Pi or a mobile phone eventually. But then you already have a node that can run pretty well in a Raspberry Pi, and you have some guides to run your own node in a Raspberry Pi, which I'll be sharing later. But yeah, this is a very high level overview of how the architecture of a DApp would look like in the Logos ecosystem. So yeah, so there's something called Logos Core, which is let's say like a workbench, I would say. The workbench kind of integrates different modules into it. We have pre-built modules like storage, messaging, and blockchain, which is similar to Ethereum, Whisper, and Swarm. So we have these three cornerstone modules, and there's also possibility to add more user modules into the application. So anyone can kind of add a user module into Logos Store by contributing to it. And user modules can also be other blockchain nodes like Ethereum or pretty much anything, not even blockchain, can be something like Torrent, for example. But yeah, it's extensible, and inside the blockchain we have both the execution zone and data availability consensus layer. And I will definitely share more news about the blockchain in the next few minutes. But then it's a layer on the blockchain, and we have logos messaging and logo storage which complement the blockchain. So all of this together formulates the logos core workbench, and the workbench is built on top of Anon Comps, which is a decentralized discovery and uh, peer discovery and mixed-net module. So this also kind of ensures that the peer discovery happens in a decentralized way and it's not centralized for particular peers. And we also have something called the Logos kernel, and the whole system together looks very similar to Linux. And if you know how to use Linux, you already know how to use Logos, and that's just another analogy that we have within our team. But yeah, if you want to build an app on top of Logos, the way you do it is by integrating Logos core into your application, and you just interact with all of these modules if you integrate Logos core. So yeah, Lotus Code is like an SDK for you to kind of have all this functionality within your app. And this comes in with inbuilt peer discovery and all of these things. And it's very different from how you will build an Ethereum app. For example, if you build an Ethereum app, you go to Alchemy or a RPC provider, generate API keys, and the API keys are probably stored in a uh, database running in Amazon S3, sorry, Amazon AWS service. Uh, yeah, so it's super centralized and it's just like completely against why Web3 exists. Um, and we are trying to kind of get away from the browser-based centralization and RPCs by using a local-first approach. So all the apps that you build on top of Logos will be desktop applications and not hosted applications uh, in any cloud. So yeah, a few more points about the individual modules. Storage, it's very similar to IPFS. We have a content address storage network, and each and every file inside the network is identified by a cryptographic hash and not a location that is related. And we also have verifiable redundancy for maximum uptime. It's highly durable. And finally, we do have private retrievers. So the files by itself are encrypted and you can make encrypted queries and access the files using a decentralized access control. And this can eventually replace things like AWS S3 buckets, IPFS gateways that are also centralized, RDB nodes, centralized CDNs, and all of these things. And the second component is Logos messaging. Logos messaging is previously Vaku, and Vaku has been integrated in a lot of production level projects. For example, we have the graph protocol using Vaku columns, and a lot of them are safe. There's also another example, Raytheon, there's been a lot of projects who have been using Vaku in production for a while. But yeah, Logos messaging kind of has some additions to what Vaku originally was. We have the same features like sender, receiver, and unreachability and stuff. But then we also have new additions like privacy preserving DDoS protection with RLN. RLN stands for rate limiting nullifiers. This is a project from the Ethereum Foundation itself. And with RLN, we can implement a rate limiting system for the network, which does not revolve around identity. So it's like implementing an anonymous rate limiting system for the network so that no one kind of spams the system and brings it down. So that's the second feature. And the third feature is also about the resource constrained devices. So you can run Bluetooth code in any resource like I mentioned before, can be as small as a Raspberry Pi. And what is also able to support resource restricted environments. And logos messaging will eventually replace, or is expected to replace things like centralized uh, chat applications like Discord, Telegram, API gateways, centralized coordination tools, or centralized relays of any sort. The most common misconception is that people think Logos messaging is a chat protocol, but it's not. It's a bit low level, so you can actually build a chat protocol on top of Logos messaging. But Logos messaging by itself is not a chat protocol. For example, XMPP is pretty popular, and I believe they were also using uh, Logos messaging, which was Waku at some point for their early nodes. They used N Waku nodes as their earlier nodes at some point, but I'm not sure if they're still using it. But yeah, a lot of projects have been using Logos messaging already. And finally, Logos blockchain. This is probably the most important part of the stack because the most usual question that we get, especially from Ethereum devs, is like, oh, why another blockchain? You can simply uh, build an abstraction on top of Ethereum, which is bringing privacy into Ethereum. There's a lot of projects who are already doing it. But the reason why we wanted to go towards the L1 path is still not clear for me, honestly. I'm still trying to understand what are the pros and cons. I'll be very honest. But then, yeah, from my understanding, there's three important things. There's logos blockchain programs for internal state. All persistent data is stored in accounts and passed explicitly into each execution. So I think the state management, the way we manage state itself is like very different when we compare it with the and there's also integrated privacy zones within the execution environment and synchronous composability within the blockchain itself. And finally, we have privacy primitives built from ground to up. It's not building an abstraction on top of an existing blockchain. We are doing it right from the get-go. So yeah, that's the reason why we wanted a layer one blockchain that is suitable for something like logo store. Uh, yeah, and logo store finally is the native workbench that I mentioned. Uh, there's no RPCs or middlemen required when you use logo store. Code ensures that all your interactions are directly communicated with the network and don't have any intermediary in it. And this way you can avoid any centralized gateways or accessing an application's user interface. So just to give you an example for how a gateway can look like, I know a lot of us use IPFS. I've been a big IPFS fanboy for like the last 5 years at least. But the way in which we use IPFS is really funny because let's say something like Pinata is what people use for uploading files into IPFS or even retrieving files from IPFS. And Pinata is nothing but it's like a managed node, managed IPFS node that kind of holds your files for a specific set duration. So it's completely against what Filecoin or IPFS is intended to do. It's just like a service that gives you managed node where people can upload your files. And yeah, there's other issues that I particularly have with IPFS. For example, garbage collection. If you mint an NFT with IPFS and if you don't access the asset for more than 30 days, the asset simply disappears. And that's how uh, undurable or non-durable IPFS is in terms of storing files. And that's the reason why we kind of have lower storage. And all of these modules have such reasonings behind it, but yeah, most of them are built in a way in which we avoid any centralized intermediary. And the only trade-off that we have for introducing this architecture is that we can do it in a hosted environment like a website. So you can't really build web apps on top of logos. You can only build uh, desktop applications or local first applications on top of logos. So yeah, Ethereum solved the trusted computation, but the next decade must solve everything around it. The blockchain is already centralized, but the way in which we interact with the blockchain is not centralized, not decentralized, and that's exactly what this is trying to solve. And the vision is not just a chain, but an internet where users can trust into it. And that's the way in which we try to uphold civil liberties by making sure that you use privacy preserving sovereign infrastructure and also apps with the of privacy preserving sovereign infrastructure where you don't have to trust a gateway, but you can own what you are using. And again, I think we're reaching the end of the presentation. Uh, but yeah, some quick shout outs to the projects who have already integrated us. Raytheon, Portrait, Safe, the graph was using us at some point, but then I'm not sure if they're using us anymore. But the graph used Waku for decentralizing their indexes as a part of graph ops, which is like we are indexing side of it. Yeah, these are some projects that have already used us in the past. So apart from these technical aspects, is also something called global circles. We have circles all around the world. Circles are local communities which are working on a specific renewable issue in a specific locality. For example, we have a circle in London. That's where I usually live, but then I'm staying at the moment. But then, yeah, the one in London is very unique because we are trying to uh, kind of create discussions about the digital ID system that the UK government has been uh, giving us a sneak peek on in the past. So we're trying to create more content and research about this and maybe eventually uh, create some proposals for what decentralized way of checking immigration records, right to work, and other stuff can look like. We're just creating some pilot applications and some hackathon level applications in our circle, and we have like around 25 to 30 people who attend our monthly event in London every month. But then there's like so many other circles, each of these circles are working on different renewable issues. I know the Los Angeles circle is also working on something very interesting. They're trying to build a decentralized neighborhood app, I guess. I'm not sure what the name of the existing app is, but then there's an app in the US specifically where you kind of post about your neighborhood updates and stuff. For example, when there's a water shortage, you just post about it and then it goes know about it or something. And they have a specific use case of integrating privacy and blockchain into it. So they're trying to build it within their circle. So there's so many other circles, so many cool legal issues that they're working on. And you can, I believe there is a circle no police already. I think so. But I will double check again. But yeah, there's so many cool circles. You can learn more about circles in the website that I'll be showcasing in the next few minutes. But yeah, you can look at your circles or you can start your own circle. And those will be helping you organize these events. And we also do like small grants for organizing these events every month. So yeah, I'll share more links to circles in the next few minutes. But then yeah, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you like it, feel free to send me a PM on X. You can find me at HackyGood1X or GitHub or pretty much anywhere in any social. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them right now. But I do have a small presentation segment after the question as well. Yeah, I can hear you. Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I think I have a resource that is very apt to solve this, answer this question. So we have something called Builder Hub, where you can curate all the resources that people can find useful there when they want to build an app. And over here we have an inspiration section which has some community ideas. So over here we have like we just started it very recently. I think we have like 26 ideas submitted within the last 3 weeks. Yeah, so all of these ideas are use cases which revolve around uh, privacy. So, for example, if someone opened a proposal or an idea about building Europe's first digital escape egress or escape avoidance survivors, and there's like a small content about what they are planning to build or what they want to see built. So even if they're not a developer, they can simply submit an idea, and people build on top of those hackathons and other events and simply pick up this idea from inspiration boards, they can build it. But then most of these use cases are surrounding civil liberties, just like the one that we saw, like building the survivors, which is very, like the privacy aspect there is very important because uh, obviously, like it's a whistleblowing platform of some sort, so you definitely need a lot of privacy in trying to expose something like this. So yeah, I mean, these are some example use cases, and you can also propose your own idea if you want to, like going here and picking this up with an idea. Then just filling out the form and get the idea okay. And once someone reviews it, the idea comes up with it. Yeah, 100%. So we is on lambda prices. So this is like step four after you kind of go through all the other parts of the onboarding is these items where you can actually get an incentive for building stuff on top of those, and you do have some financial RFPs already in place, and we are having a couple of proposals for them already. This atomic swaps, for example, is a proposal for privacy preserving checks, and you can look at the specification for each of these things over here. And if you're interested on building any of these use cases, you can simply submit a proposal. And we are already inviting proposals from the community for the last 4 weeks. Yeah, is atomic swaps, pretty much anything on a layer one blockchain. You can build the same DeFi equivalent over here in Logos, and it's very early, so yeah, I think that all the RFPs that will be fulfilled are going to be like launch the applications, or we don't have any other application in the ecosystem for these. So it's definitely a huge opportunity for these things. And again, there's like more RFPs coming in the next few days. It's all under review. If you want to know more about what RFPs are going to come, you can go the full request in our repository. We have like our team reviewing these RFPs, and then we have more RFPs coming up over here. So yeah, 7 RFPs are already open, and we're expecting to have at least 20 by the end of this month. Yeah, I mean, I think it's still pretty early for benchmarks. I don't think we have benchmarks yet because the blockchain itself is like a bit wonky. I'm not going to hype it up too much, but then it's not yet ready for users, but then it's probably in a state where people can run a node and give feedback to us about their experience, or you can simply start building applications on top of blockchain. But yeah, it's definitely early for this. If you want to run a node, we have this specific resource which kind of lets you want to run a node, where it barely takes you like 5 minutes to set it up. And then there's another resource which is something that I missed in the presentation. So we have something called Logos Base Camp, and Logos Base Camp is a client that we build on top of Logos. So you can imagine Logos to be torrent, and Logos Base Camp is the bit torrent of Logos. And there can be multiple clients. Anyone can build a client on top of Logos, just like corporate torrent built on top of torrent. And Logo Space Camp is a desktop app. It's still up, it's taking down every other second, but then this is how the development review right now looks like. It's open source, fully open source, so anyone can use it. But then all these over here are different modules. So if you create an app on top of Logos, you probably don't really go into the browser to access the application, but then your app lives over here as a module. And for example, I have a couple of modules over here. This is a counter module that is kind of for learning to build on top of logos, because I'm still learning to build on top of logos. And the development stack is also very different. It's not web technologies. We use C++ and Qt. So I don't really know about these technologies, but I'm kind of getting used to it. But yeah, this is a app built on top of logos that uses a simple counter. And all the apps that you build are modules within the application. So yeah, that's how the blockchain or messaging or storage is intended to be used. And this is like state of the art decentralization because everything runs in your machine. And we also have like a package manager over here where you can install packages. For example, for blockchain, we have a couple of these packages. This is the core package, which is like running your own blockchain. So if you want to run a blockchain, you can just install the specific package. And let's say if you are someone who just wants to use these distributed storage for blockchain, you can just install this one. Or yeah, like we have many opt-in packages into this. So this is more like a app store for your using logos. But yeah, this is a very, I know this is not usual like the other Web3 layer one blockchains, but this is how you use logos without compromising on decentralization. Yeah, I'm looking forward to being suggested that Portugal is super good. It's like the best place in Brazil. I went to South America for the first time last year, so I will probably do Brazil this year. Thank you.